Welcome back. Millions of South Africans are feeling the pinch of the ever-rising cost of living. This has prompted social activists to call on all sectors of society to urgently address the issue of food affordability. That's because the country can't afford social instability associated with food scarcity. Life is especially difficult for some people living in KwaZulu-Natal. Last year, the province was at the centre of alarming incidents of looting, and the economic effects are still being felt to this day. Tragedy struck once again in April when heavy rains led to flooding, claiming the lives of nearly 500 people. eNCA brings you this special report on how some flood victims are navigating the difficult economic conditions.
These are the remains of what used to be the home of 70-year-old Temsile Shangase and her late sister. The recent deadly floods in KwaZulu-Natal did not only wash away the family's property, the youngest sibling in the Shangase family also did not make it out alive. Life has changed drastically for this entire family. These remaining Shangase siblings now share this one-bedroom house.
Hey, avinzima impilo. Hey, cool. Kuba noma ngabe uhlala kadadewini akufana kwakho. Khona ngempela impilo khona. Ngoba ngihleli ngifice eminyango uyangithanda ngisho ungene endlini. Ngeke impilo uyiyona ngayo.
Not far from where she lives, her other sister is taking care of 4 children. Doing so without the social grant which their late grandmother used to collect.
Sise abantu nje abasacela usizo esikhatheni esiningi ngoba izinto eziningi asizitholi ezimalana nosizo lwabantwana ngoba sihleli nabantwana ekhaya.
Government has promised to help such families to rebuild, but the Shangases are among 14,000 people who are hoping that the government that's dealing with the shrinking fiscus will somehow find enough money to deal with yet another disaster. Before this disaster hit, these relatives were already battling to survive in a country crippled by the COVID-19 pandemic, rising fuel and food prices. The rising price of fuel will not just see price increases, but also threats to the national energy supply. South Africa's public electricity supplier Eskom has warned that it can only afford to spend so much for fuel.
We have seen an increase in transport cost, in electricity cost, in debt servicing, massive increases, which means that there are less money left over in the budget to purchase food.
When the deadly floods hit in April, they were living on the combined money from the old age government pension and child grants. But with the younger sibling gone, these sisters are now solely dependent on the old age pension. 18 months ago, 50% of the pension money could buy enough food to last her for 3 weeks. But the groceries she bought today will only feed the siblings for 10 days.
And we were particularly struck by, for instance, the massive spikes in oils, so cooking oil, which has spiked over the last year by about 52%, and that has had implications for margarine, which has increased by almost about 13%.
It's a situation that has seen non-governmental organizations like the faith-based Child Protection Movement joining forces with UNICEF to provide food parcels and uniforms to families like the Shangases. But they too have been hit hard by high food prices.
It was very challenging to put a decent food parcel together, considering the rising cost of food. Let me just give you a simple example, just 2 items. The price of a 5-litre gallon of oil was 100 Rand if we had done this 3 years ago, and today we pay 250 Rands.
Activists say that improving food security is crucial to peace and stability in the province and beyond.
There's a global principle, not only in South Africa but globally, that there is a direct connection between household food security and social stability. And when household food insecurity increases, it increases the risk of social instability. And so what we saw last year in July, for instance, was that opportunistic elements can utilize deepening levels of poverty, deepening levels of hunger, and people can go on a looting spree for 8 days, not because they agreed with the political sloganeering, but because they were hungry.
Furthermore, there are fears that the money allocated for the recovery and rebuilding in the province will end up in the pockets of politicians, the same way it happened with the COVID-19 relief funds. But the Shangases are still optimistic and want politicians to redeem themselves by making this disaster recovery about this community rather than about lining their own pockets and those of their relatives. Well, only time will tell.